By January, it had grown so dark in the old kitchen that even at lunchtime, the girl sometimes reached up and switched on the light, so that in the illumination, the outside world was even farther away. Her great-aunt's voice, dim and diffuse as the gas flame, brooded over the scene. I don't care about seeing what I eat after so long on the diet. All those vegetables, and all weighing as light as hay. The girl wasn't listening, however. Slowly, she sucked the noodles out of her soup and gazed over the top of the diet scales that always seemed to dominate the table, past her relative's wispy gray head. Out through the kitchen window to the backyard where snow was falling in a pale Sunday afternoon way. She had a curious sense of floating in space. Time, a puppet dangling by thin ivory strings like noodles. Floating, swimming in the warmth of snow. Through the dusty curtains and over the wizened leaves of the youth and old age plant on the windowsill, she saw the detached boughs of the lilac tree by the shed move and beckon. Just a little longer, or maybe farther, they seemed to say. But even at that moment, the window was steaming over, the will-o'-the-wisp growing dim and indistinct. And then, the old woman was saying, she would run and I would run, mostly down the line fence towards the marshes and sometimes right under the fence into Jake Hawley's place. You never saw a turkey hen could run like that. What was she running from? The girl asked dreamily as she poured their tea. From you, I know, but then, why? You mean to say you don't know? I would think you'd know everything by now from reading all those books. Well, turkey hens like to raise their brood wild, so they run off into the bush to lay their eggs. Then, if you don't hunt the nests and set the eggs out right away, there'll be wild turkeys, and a fox will get them. They're foolish little birds. Many a time I've come on the little bones strewn around a patch of oak leaves, just as if they had sat out in plain view and waited. That happened to us twice, and the next spring my father said someone must watch the turkey hen. I was the runt of the family, and in the summer I couldn't mow with the others. Every time Father made me go up there, I'd faint. Harriet and Martha used to slide down the hay with me, carry me to the pump. It gave them a chance to rest, too. The doctor was afraid of consumption, especially after Ellen died. I was 16. That was how it all started. The loveliest time of my life. I could run. It was the only thing I could do. She would run, and I would run. Back down the lane, through the lime pit sometimes, past the pond, she just waiting to elude me and head for the brush pile. Often I'd be sobbing. Tired. Afraid I'd lost her when there'd be a sudden motion of a brown head, and I'd wait and then gather up the eggs in my apron. If I found them quickly, I'd go round by the creek before I came home. There was a log bridge that used to sway under the team. I'd leave the eggs wrapped in my apron, sitting on a big stone in the sun. Then I'd swing my legs or trail my feet through the clear spring water and watch the shadows of weeds moving on the sunlit bottom. The orange touch-me-nots clambered down the bank to the edge, and the cardinal flowers grew back in the shade of the cedars. Sometimes you saw a deer start and leap away over the damp logs. On the way back over the fields, I remember I often met Mother coming along with Marnie, each of them swinging a big basket of clothes to watch. "Don't help us, Belle," my mother would say. "Run home and get the dinner on. You must be tired." And she would look at me steadily as she passed, her eyes black and heavy. One time after that, when the turkey hen was getting very cunning and I had a particularly hard time finding her in the brush piles, I got the idea of a bell. There was a little one in the tool shed, and I tied it on with binder twine. Then I thought she would kill herself. You never saw such clawing. The yard was full of blood and feathers, and I was sure someone would come. But the bell stayed on, and by the gobbler strutted around and accepted it. From then on, of course, it was easier to follow her. Tinkle, tinkle went the bell down the lane among the brush piles, looping the fences. She would run, and I would run. I thought after the first week that no one had noticed her, but then one day, a fall fair day when I was down rinsing my hair at the soft water barrel, I heard the boys giggling in the harness room. And pretty soon Mark and John were in the yard, Mark with our old sleigh harness draped around him, and John behind with a long gad, and shouting, "There's a nice old turkey! Come home now, home to Belle, ringing your bell behind you." Then they jingled the harness and made fun of Belle's bell, till I burst out crying and ran into the house. The worst of it was that the new school teacher who boarded at Martin's was in the yard with Father as I ran by. The girl had been sitting with her chin on her fists. Now she jumped up. Let me help you with the dishes, Auntie." No, that's all right. Get on with your studying. I guess you have more to do than listen to me." "Oh no, I want to rest my eyes anyhow. I just thought the water would be getting cold." "Go on about the turkeys, anything you can remember." The old woman emptied the kettle into the dishpan, carefully filled it again, and washed 2 cups. "Well, there isn't much more, I guess. I had saved Father a lot of money that summer. We sold a lot of turkeys to the neighbors, and he was pleased. He said that if I would stay home the next summer and help out, he'd let me board with the milliner in the village after that and learn the trade. The next spring I was 17, and I could hardly wait for the quilting frames to be put away. I could hardly wait. And then, unbelievably, it was May, and I was running out down the lane in my bare feet following the bell. I couldn't help singing. On the way home, I ran round by the log bridge to see how much it had rotted away during the winter, and there on the edge of the cedar swamp, I met Mr. Taylor, the young teacher. He had been fishing our creek. I stood there, embarrassed, hiding my feet in the tall swamp grass and wishing he would go on. In the end, he went with me, talking cheerfully all the way, and I ran into the house without saying anything. Then I watched him through the geraniums on the windowsill as he talked to Mother, and gave her the stick of trout he caught. Next morning, as I ran out of the house, my father called me back to put my shoes on, because there was a lot of dew, he said. But when I went to the milk house, there was the young teacher, standing by Mother with the long-handled skimmer. I stood there, flushing, looking at the hard toes of my shoes and not knowing what to say. Then suddenly the bell went by, and I dropped the empty pails and ran. She was out of sight down the lane already. The teacher caught up with me as I slipped through the broken bars of the lane gate. He didn't say anything. We just ran down the hill together. We jumped over a killdeer's nest. It was mid-May and a morning all clear, green, and moving, with the wind sort of bubbling through the grass and trees. In the old days, it seemed as if all the mornings were like the first morning of the world. And I could have run forever through the tall grass. Run and not wearied. There were little white blobs of spittle on the buttercups, and the first white flowers of the strawberry were out, and I was 17. The school teacher took my hand, and we ran over the stony pasture after the bell. The old turkey hen was crouched under a dead cedar at the end of the swamp, and I let him find her. It was very still while we hunted, and then suddenly there'd come the tinkle of a bell through the scrub. There were 5 eggs, creamy-colored and freckled all over with brown. The old hen bird started to run ahead of us back to the farm. "Your mother won't miss you for once," he said. We sat on the bridge and watched the flies skate over the water. Now alone with him, my shyness was gone. I showed him the big trout that lay ponderously among the silver weeds, and we bent together, laughed together to see him dart away. The grass was full of those vibrant blue flowers and little brittle frogs that were forever on the jump, so that the whole swamp rustled. And he talked to me about himself or his family or the pupils in the school. I said I wished I could have gone to school, but Father needed us to help. His eyes were so brown. He had an invalid mother and a farm that was heavily mortgaged. It would be a long time before... And I remember watching the water flies, looking at my hands, red and cut with scouring milk pails, and thinking of the winter coming, when I would be free of it all. Pushed out of the nest at last, living at the milliner's in the village, trimming hats with ostrich plumes or blush satin roses, and going to the church sociables, fairs, singing, dancing. Jen had told me so much about it. Such a long time, and such hard work it would be before. Then he told me about books, and especially the poetry books. They were the nicest of all. It was like sitting around the stove in the winter, all of us together, listening to Father talk of the old country. Mr. Taylor had written some himself. He recited, lying back on the bridge, his head tilted in the sun. It was so beautiful. I wished... something. I don't know. And I looked at his brown eyes again. At my hands again. Into his eyes. It was so very quiet there on the bridge, and then suddenly I heard the clank of cowbells along the lane. Noon, and the cows were coming to drink. I sprang up in a fright. "Your mother won't mind," he kept saying. "I'll tell her." My mother was standing outside the milk house churning. It was a warm day, and beads of perspiration stood out on her upper lip, moistened her forehead, and her knot of gray-brown hair seemed to be drawn back from her face more quickly than usual. She dried her hands on her apron and watched us coming. I could not meet her eyes as I slipped into the house. I saw him speaking to her quite easily, holding out the eggs, offering to churn. For a long time she held a teaspoon, rubbed the bowl of it with her dishcloth, and the girl, waiting, moving between the sink and the cupboard, listening a little, for the telephone prompted. "Yes, but what happened to the young schoolteacher, Mr. Taylor?" "Oh, him? He went away. Took a better school, I guess. I did hear where he went. Into Kimberley, nearer his mother. Maybe. I think when my father heard more about him and the mortgage, he told him not to come back. After all, I had been raised barefoot in a log house. But there was no need to make things harder for us all. I learned the millinery, and then your Uncle Peter Martin came along. He had a new barn and 300 acres. I guess that's all." The old woman moved slowly into the front room and sat on the sofa, studying the yellow dial of the radio. Left alone in the kitchen, the girl whisked off the diet scales and swept the floor. Then she sat down on the yellow kitchen chair by the window and stared out disconsolately at the pale snow, the discolored sky, and with the taut, beckoning arm of the lilac. And then your Uncle Peter Martin came along. She would run, and I would run. I could have run forever through the long green grass. Run and never wearied. Run and followed the tinkle of a bell. Wild turkeys, a new barn, 300 acres? His eyes were so brown. I looked at my hands. It was all so confusing, especially the lilac tree, and her eyes ached with reading. Looking out, she was sure she could see the will-o'-the-wisp cavorting among the snowdrifts and never noticing how very cold the day had grown. She rested her head on the chair back, and a slow smile curved her lips as the telephone rang. "I'll get it, Auntie," she called, but to herself thought she, "No, I'll wait a moment. Let him wait a moment. Why should he be so certain? And why the telephone so insistent? I'll give this plant a drink." And she sneezed as she parted the dusty curtains to carry the youth and old age plant to the sink. It was odd, the two kinds of leaves living together of the same plant. So much the same, so different.